Guys, so this is Kirsten Keener here, just doing my final presentation practice video for IMS 452. Alright, so as you can see, I am doing my whole project over Fort St. Clair, Reimagined. This fort is located in Eaton, Ohio, and so it's right near to my hometown, and it's just something that's really near and dear to me, and so I want to do my senior degree project on it. Okay, so the main problem that I'm trying to solve is that there's very little tourism in the city of Eaton, and so that means very little tourism money coming into the city. And one of the big attractions of the city of Eaton is the Fort St. Clair Park, and the locals visit it really regularly, and even the people in the surrounding towns and stuff, such as mine, visit it quite often as well. Another problem is that there's very little information about the fort itself. And there's been no images or drawings that can be found of the fort, which is pretty unusual actually. Usually there would be hand sketches from the soldiers or the officers at the time, but there was none for this fort. There's descriptions of it, but again, no actual drawings. And so that actually leaves the fort to run the risk of being forgotten, aside just from word of mouth even. So my original thoughts and plans for this was to create the entirety of the fort in a 3D environment, which would have been Unreal Engine. I then would have used just a variation of AR, so that when somebody were to scan a QR code, which would be located at the site of the fort itself, it would then take them to a website about the fort. And depending on what they scanned, like for example, if they were to scan about the blockhouses, it would then take them to a specific page within the website that would then provide them with information about what they scanned, so about the blockhouses, and provide a video showing imagery of what the blockhouses would have looked like physically and within the fort, which would have been taken from Unreal Engine, so from the 3D environment. And it would have shown them just what this structure would have looked like. Unfortunately, of course, due to these extenuating circumstances, I had to come up with a new solution, and that has been that I would have hand sketched the various buildings that would have been located inside the fort itself and surrounding the fort, and created a website that contained the images and history of the fort so that it can be viewed by the public. And this also allows for stuff to be added to it later on, which is what I'm discussing now. So I'm actually going to be taking an additional semester in the fall specifically to work on this project. And it will have the full 3D environment of all the buildings, inside and outside, the fort itself. And I'm hoping that I will now, since I'll be dedicating all my time specifically to this, that I will have enough time to do stuff inside of the buildings as well, not just have a representation of the outside of the buildings. And actually doing an additional semester of this allows me to potentially have discussions with the City Council of Eaton and discuss getting posts put into the park that would contain the QR codes for people to scan that would take them to the website to look at these videos and get information about the fort. So I'm just going to show some of the images of what I've sketched out in concept. So as you can see on the left, it's just a big overhead view of the fort and the surrounding area. So where the potential blacksmith would have been located in corral. And on the right there is just a straight overhead view of the fort where stuff would have been located, all the various buildings and stuff. Okay, now we've moved on to a few structures that are on the inside of the fort. So as you can see on the right, these are the hand-sketched images I've made of the blockhouse and of one of the barracks. And as you can see on the left, these are images that I've referenced quite heavily with when I sketched out these images. So these buildings would have been made around the same time period as Fort St. Clair. And this would have been roughly about the same size as would have been in Fort St. Clair. And so that's why I use these quite heavily to quite heavily influence my sketches. And the wood and nails are just what would have been used at the time. And this is about the same as the last slide, just a little more deep information about the officers' quarters. Would have only held about maybe 10 officers. The entire fort itself would only have held about 100 soldiers, we're guessing. And so the officers' quarters would have only have needed one to hold about 10 people. In the storage room, there would have been two of them. One would have been for firearms and weapons, and the other would have been for food. And again, just the middle images are just references to what would have been used at the time. And this is the chimney that would have been located in against each of the officers' quarters in the barracks to heat them up. It would have just been used of probably limestone, which was located in the relative area, instead of brick, because brick takes quite a bit of time actually to make if they would have been hand making them. And they actually built this fort quite quickly, within just a few weeks. And so they needed stone that would have been quite easy to find and quite easy to use. And as you can see, limestone is relatively flat. And so it would have been quite easy to build up into a chimney. This is images of the gate and wall. And it would have just been, as you can see in the reference images, just regular logs that would have been cut at the top to form spikes to use as a defense. And the doors would have actually been, if you've ever seen old barn doors, would have been quite similar to that. And as you can see in the reference images, with just a one wooden barrier across the front to keep it closed. And this is what the trench surrounding the entire fort could have possibly looked like. These reference images are not the greatest because it's actually quite difficult to find images of proper trenches surrounding forts. You mainly find images of trenches from, say, World War II, and the trenches surrounding the fort would not have been quite that extensive or that extreme. And so they would have only been maybe 1 to 2 feet deep and even wide. And it was just a way for them to try to slow down the enemy if they were to come up against them. And this is the well that would have been located outside of the fort most likely. There's some streams that are located near the fort, and so it would have made sense for the well to be closer to that. It just again would have been made of the limestone in the nearby river because that's quite easy to layer again. And the cover would have just been real simple, just a couple wooden boards nailed together, just to keep it from having debris get into it. We also would have had a horse corral that would have been located, just right near the fort, but obviously outside of the fort, because if there's about 100 soldiers there would have been about 100 horses, and that all can't fit inside of the fort. And there would have been absolutely nothing left of this after over 200 years, because it would have all just been wooden posts and stuff like this. But this is an older colonial style of fencing, and it's quick and simple, and it was just a barrier for the horses to not get through, and so it makes sense for them to have used something like this. And the last we have is of the blacksmith that would have been located outside of the fort. This has been kind of unfortunately debatable. With a lot of the histories we found of the fort, people like to put it inside of the fort. But in speaking with an archaeologist, it really does not make any sense for the blacksmiths who have been located inside the fort, because there would have been a constant fire going, and the blacksmith would have been constantly making stuff with that large fire and a large chimney and stove area. And so it being located nearby outside of the fort makes much more sense, because it would have been helping to prevent or to minimize the potential fire damage of the fort, because of just how it was. And obviously you can see that I highly reference these old style blacksmiths when I created mine. All right, and so that is it for this, for me showing you this. I would like to show you the website that I've created for it, just through Wix. It's real simple right now, but I have everything up that I would like, and so there's quite a lot that I can add to it if I want, to just enhance it and improve it. And so, you have your basic, and obviously I would like to, once we're actually allowed to go outside again, I'd like to physically go out and get some clear, proper images of the fort itself, or the fort area itself, to put in here and show exactly what it would have looked like. And so we just have what we would have had a little blurb about the fort, and button that'll just take you for more information. I'd like to put in some more images here about it. And just a little thing about how we would reimagine this fort. And again, another button to take you to what that would entail on this website. And just in the little contact information thing that will hopefully get set up later on, once we actually get that kind of stuff up and running. And so we'll move on to the history portion of the fort. And this is not complete yet, because quite a lot of history is in the fort. And so I want to make sure that all the information is as correct and accurate as can be done. And so this just has a tiny little bit about it. But I would obviously like to add a whole lot more, because the history of the fort is quite interesting. There's a battle that took place that was quite extensive. And so getting all that down would be quite interesting. And so here's the more important part, which is the reimagining of it. And we have our whole exterior and interior that will take you to the websites, and just a little bit about it, not a whole lot of the information on this page. And when you move to the exterior, you just get images of all the different structures that would have been located on at the exterior of the fort, with just a little bit of basic information about it, and such. And again, the same as for the interior of the fort. And we'd like to be adding even more information that is there, even going so far as to give details about what kind of wood might have been used. And there will be some room that is left over, as you can see right here, that we would like to add, that can be used for potentially putting in videos. So when I get that 3D reconstruction done, then I can take an individual video of the blockhouse itself, going up close, going into more details, and potentially going inside of it as well. That can be located right here, and that we would have the QR code down at the location of the fort itself that you would scan, and it would take you right here, so that you can see the video of it and read some information about it and see the sketch that helped to bring it to life. All right, so this was my senior degree project practice video for IMS 452. I'm Kirsten Keener, and thank you for watching.